It's a lot of money. Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of decision making, like you said. And I think it's pretty easy for people to say, well, no, I don't want to put thought into this. This is what I hired you for.
It's almost like going in for surgery. There's going to be 5 doctors in there to do one surgery. Maybe I'm not sure, but
you're going to have an anesthesiologist. Yeah. Sorry, I just had to cut in because it's great. You wouldn't get a doctor who specializes in hearts working on your brain, right? Hey everybody, my name's Rhiannon and this is Better Building with Buck, episode 11, and it's been a while, but we're back. There was a couple things that took our time and attention. I had a baby in December, and Caitlin, our creative director, and Jordan moved houses as well, so we've had to take a bit of a hiatus, but we're back and we missed you, so yeah. Hey, right, I guess topic today, Jordan and I were able to sit in on a seminar done by BC Housing last week about the integrated design process. So that is going to be our topic today that we're covering. And I guess I'll just hand it over to Jordan if you want to.
Yeah. So it was interesting to, it was the Canadian Home Builders that I think put it on actually.
Okay, sorry.
So that's okay though.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, so the course was on integrated design process. And so we're kind of trying to do something like that, but not as detailed out or as planned out. It was more organic in the way that we tried to approach it, and we think that having more effort put towards it is really helpful, and so we were happy to get a little bit more instruction on maybe how we could approach that and not feel like it's such a daunting task, and it's just a matter of starting small. And so when we talk about
I guess let's explain too. I guess go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so integrated design process is when you're getting all the parties of the project together. And so on a large scale project, that could be the designer, engineers, all the way down to the trades. And sometimes they talked about even getting municipalities involved so that you would also get buy-in and feedback from them about what they're expecting if you're going in for maybe a development permit. Mm-hmm. And then giving them a wider vision of what the goals are for the project. And then when you bring it down to like the smallest scale, when you're doing maybe a small renovation or a more simple build, it could just be the designer, the owner, and the builder that sit at the table. And so I think that if that's not happening from the beginning, your project's already started off on the wrong foot. And so we were already doing that, and then a little bit of getting the trades to put their input in on the project, especially when it comes to HVAC and plumbing, and saying, hey, this is where we're at with the plan. I guess I didn't also talk about the energy advisor, but anyways, the getting everybody's input on how that end goal is going to look. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to have a goal. And that was kind of like what I took from it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it kind of provides just like I think we could probably pull from a ton of our other podcasts and how this relates to it, obviously. But I think part of the process, there's been a few times where I've worked in the realm where people will go and they will have their design done first without a builder or no working knowledge of how this is going to happen. They've just got a set of plans that comply with the bylaws and the building code, and that's about it, right? And just from my experience, having only that one person, I don't know how far, how the process goes after that for the most part. If we don't have a builder, if we don't have the energy advisor involved, we don't know what happens after those plans go out and they go through the city. And I just think it's really imperative, in my experience, that you have a builder involved right from the beginning. And that's sort of, I guess, the integrated design process, like Jordan had said, it could be used for a bigger commercial company, but in our case, we're probably just going to start off with like a small meeting with the homeowner, the builder, and me, the designer. And then that's going to get sort of our concept out. And that means, you know, while I'm working on the design, Jordan is going to be feeding his input to me as well as the homeowner. I feel like, you know, I don't even really need to explain this. I think everybody probably understands, but just want to explain how it's really beneficial to a project. So once we get through like that concept process, it's just really going to streamline things into the next process.
I guess, yeah, just because you can draw this thing does not mean that it can be built.
Exactly. And just because I can draw this thing too, it doesn't mean that is, okay, words are hard. I've been talking to babies for 3 months. Oh, shoot. That doesn't mean that, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's okay.
Shoot. Okay.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
So when you have an idea and say it's in conceptual, right? Mm-hmm. That's a good time to start thinking about
critical
the ability to build this building, and then also reflecting that on the budget too. Mm-hmm. And so if somebody's got some wild ideas about the form and character of this building, to understand that, okay, yeah, we can do this, but I can see that this detail over here is going to need engineering. This detail over here is going to need engineering. Are you wanting to go down that route, or you want to keep this building in Part 9? Mm-hmm. Now, I think that more and more of our buildings are going to get pushed towards Part 3, which, so when I say this, it probably means nothing to you, but so Part 9 is their building code, and then Part 3 is when an engineer is taking over and detailing out the project. So now you can't have parts of the building in Part 3 and parts of the building in Part 9. It's either in Part 3 or in Part 9. And so that is most people now are wanting certain things in their building that turn the building into Part 3. So I think that more and more buildings aren't going to be built in Part 9. The other thing too is when you're trying to go through municipalities and trying to get permitting and stuff like that, when you have an engineer saying this is the way that we're going to do it, then they can sign off on that, and then there's not as much ability for the municipalities to say, well, we don't really like this and we don't really like that, because it doesn't, they're not concerned about at that point their concerns are on health and safety within the home, which is fine. And so it gives you the opportunity to streamline it, that process a little bit more with the city, because they're not able to pick away at certain details that they're unsure of, because they're either maybe just outside Part 9, or maybe it's a little bit more complicated than somebody that is actually doing the plan check believes that it is. And so now that we're going through a new building code, that's going to be more tricky to do stuff in Part 9, that you'll see a lot more Part 3 buildings in residential construction. Mm-hmm.
Especially, with the multi-residential.
Yeah.
When they're passing that in June, that's gonna open up a lot of Part 3 buildings for sure. Back to like the engineering and the streamlining. Yeah, we had discussed this in like a last podcast, that a lot of the elements that people want in their designs now are going to require an engineer, like open concept, big windows. I'm comfortable just telling people right off the bat, unless it's a small thing, I feel pretty comfortable saying you're going to need an engineer for this project, right away. And so just to sort of break it down, if we were to do this without the integrated design process, I'm just going to kind of give you like an idea.
Yeah, that's a good way to.
Like just sort of like, okay, so say, the customer doesn't have a builder, and they've come to me, and I have, applied every skill set I have to them. And that still isn't going to be, I still don't have a knowledge that a builder is going to have, or an engineer is going to have, right? So anyways,
can't be good at everything.
Exactly.
Day and age, there's just too many
idiosyncrasies
in everybody's work that you just can't know it all.
No, you're constantly learning in this field. If it's you're constantly learning, and there's things some of us are expected to know that we don't know, and I think it's okay to just say like, I don't know. Give me a minute. I'm going to check it out.
For sure it is.
But so say, let's just like a hypothetical situation. Jordan comes to me, say Jordan's not a builder. Jordan comes to me, he gets his plans done. And I have made sure it's complied with the bylaw, and the building code, and that's it. And then Jordan goes, cool, I got my plans. Let's go take these to the city. It took 6 weeks to get these plans done. Like now we're getting things rolling. Boom, submits it to the city. Needs to wait 4 weeks because it comes back and they're asking for a Schedule B. Needs to be engineered. Jordan doesn't have the engineer lined up. The engineer has a waiting period of 3 weeks before they can even look at the drawings. So that's just one instance. So now the city's needed a Schedule B. So you have to go and you have to get that. That's probably going to put you back another month and a half. And then you need to resubmit your permits, which is going to put you back another month and a half. Say the engineer wanted changes on the plans, then you're going to have to come back to me, and it's going to be charged hourly. So just sort of...
And then adding to your budget because you haven't put that into consideration.
It's just adding up and up and up. And that's just us working in concept on paper. We haven't even broken ground, right? So now at this point, okay, city's passed you. You got your Schedule B. You got your design. And now we get the builder on site, and he thinks, well, what the heck? We can't build this foundation that they've designed on this lot. Again, they're coming back to me, who's revising the drawings, and then they're going back to the engineer to reseal them. I could go on forever. There's like many more steps. So, I mean, just a rough idea of how long we've been going through this hypothetical process, probably like 4 months at this point. And we haven't even broken ground. So just important. This is why we feel the the integrated design process is really important. Sorry, I went on a tangent there.
No, that's okay. Good. Yeah, it's not having the right people at your table and not having the ability to even have that brainstorming amongst those parties is huge. Yes. Because there's certain things that even just your experience of different details in different ways may drive that project, either it's budget or design or buildability. All these things can be changed so quickly by just having a little bit of insight or even just doing a little round table. And there is a cost to that, but it's so much easier to plan on paper than it is in the field. And I can't say that enough is when you have a conversation around a table, these people all have to come together, and there's going to be cost to that, but how much money that can save you by those people getting in the same room. So when you're kind of building out this integrated design process and you're past the rudimentary just shape of the house, and you start actually doing some plans and understanding where beams and joists and any sort of big impacts on the structure of the houses, then you can start bringing in other trades, plumber, the HVAC. Now you're showing them these plans and saying, okay, so if you're coming into this bathroom here and you have to get to here because that's where the drainage is going to come out of the house, how are you going to get there? That's one thing with plumbing. Now, if we talk about HVAC, it's the same thing. So if you don't have places for the ducting to go, then what happens is your house ends up looking like hell because you didn't put any effort into understanding that these ducts are not small. They need places to go if you're doing a ducted system. Now, there's other options, but then that's another piece of the puzzle when you want this design, but then you also need to deal with the heating and cooling the house. So maybe you aren't doing forced air. And being able to understand that as long as the house models out that it can do that heat load calculation, or it can deal with the hot and the cold in each room, and that there's another system that could do that, then maybe you look at a split system. And some people feel that having this cassette on the wall or in the ceiling doesn't look great, but when you think about having to make all this room for ducting, that also can impact your design. So being able to have some wiggle room and understand that, you have to do some trade-offs to get that end look that you're looking for, and that there is lots of options. So going and having that round table with the people that are actually going to do the work gets you that end, allows for the ability to get closer to the end goal. Yeah, there's going to be things that are going to come up and that are missed because we're building a prototype, and so you might have missed something, and that's going to happen. But at least when you went through that process, everybody had some insight on it, and so that we can work through that and at least pick out, 80-90% of the things that would have been passed by, because all those extra eyes sure help. It sure helps.
For sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the things that I can think of for integrate design process.
I held on to a thought and I didn't forget it.
Good.
So, okay,
Nice hustle.
cool. I didn't forget it. Okay. When you had said, like, it brings us all to the table, a little round table, I think another way to kind of the way that I've always looked at design, this is going to sound weird, but like, it's going to sound bad, but like, we'll just call the design the problem. So we have our design here. And although it's not actually a problem, it's going to result constraints. So we're going to look at our problem, which is our design, and we're all going to sit at this round table, and we're all going to blow this problem up, and we're going to kind of look at all of the different avenues things could go. We look at what could go wrong in this case, what could go right in this case. So it always helped me to envision, like, okay, this is a really, this isn't it's not a small thing, but if we, zero it into this, the design is the problem. All of us are going to get together. We're going to blow this up and come up with a ton of solutions to all of these problems and all of your questions. And it sounds, I got to use a different word than problem, because the design isn't a problem, but I hope you're understanding what I'm meaning is constraints. We'll call it constraints. Yeah. Design constraints. So putting all of us together, all of us, even like a single person practicing, blowing the problem up and bringing it all together is a really good skill to have. And so if you can imagine putting that together with your team who has, all the working knowledge of this build through every process, it really is just going to clean things up a lot for you. And yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to explain, is almost you're able to see there's a lot more transparency in the process, and you're able to catch things, like Jordan said, way earlier in the process, because you got a ton of other people chirping at you about what to do. So
yeah. And so when you don't have that ability to get everybody at the table, then you're having to figure it out in the field. And this is that thing where I said that on paper it's really easy, and in the field, it gets really expensive, because sometimes you'll have to take work apart that's done to achieve the goal that you'd planned. And we had talked a little bit about engineering. Well, you might have to go back to the basics, back to the beginning to try and solve the problem, and redesign something. And when that happens, that gets really expensive. So making sure that the people that are engaged understand the project, understand where you're going, understand the goals, and have a North Star. We've worked on a document called the North Star that we're going to be starting to work with our customers and our clients with. And so it's going to be able to allow people to go through and start to explain to us with a questionnaire about what they think is valuable to them, so that when we're going through this process, we have these goals set out before the project starts. And yeah, these things are going to change as you start to go out and look at the things that are in the field. But more often than not, people's goals change, but they sometimes, with going out and looking at things, what you thought was important in the beginning is much different. So sometimes that can affect the cost. So it's good to understand that, when we first started talking, we said, okay, this is the budget, this is the goal. Okay, that's good. But now as you've gone and experienced what could be available, now we've gone in a different direction. So that having that conversation at the beginning, we can go back to what we talked about at the beginning and say, hey, this is what we had planned, and now we're moved off of that, which is fine. It's just, are you have you got distracted by shiny things? Which everybody does. But in the end, there's still a budget that has to be dealt with. And so if we can use that North Star as the goal, then yeah, that's great. We have a vision and putting effort into that. There's going to be a lot of pieces of the puzzle that you're going to have to help with, because we can't answer all your questions. You're going to live there, and your needs are what we're trying to solve for you. That's our job. We're problem solvers. So if we don't have all the problems that you have in your life or the constraints, maybe the constraints that you have gave us, then we don't know how to build the best project for you. So you have to put in the effort to think about what's actually important to you, and that has to be done through that process, but also before the process, because you really have to think about the way that you live your life.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of think like, I have never built a house for myself personally, but I can imagine that, having your house built is like an extremely stressful process. And
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of decision making, like you said. And I think it's pretty easy for people to say, well, no, I don't want to put thought into this. This is what I hired you for, right? Like, I think it might be easy for people to say that, but this is sort of the services that we provide. We need your constructive feedback. Like, that is, we need your criticisms. We need to hear what you want. Or else, you're gonna end up spending a lot more money and time than what we had originally discussed. Where else was I going with that? I think that's it. Yeah. I think that's that thought. Yeah, that's the end of that thought. I think, that's the end of that thought.
I'm going to go?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Okay. So we were trying to figure out a way to best describe what the value is of the integrated design process, as well as what each one of these meetings would look like. So it really would depend on the scope of the work. And when we say scope of work, we're talking about what the materials are going to be, how it's going to be put together, and then also the fit and finish of whatever that area is going to be, or detail. So in our first meeting, we're going to be trying to figure out the orientation of the building. And so at that first meeting, it's probably going to be the designer, the owner, and the builder, just to kind of rough out and get some really good direction on where you want to go with the house, whether that's style, whether that's roof lines, whether that's the value that having taking health and comfort into the home, those kind of, bigger, large directions that you need to take right from the get-go of building the house, because the orientation of the building could play a huge factor in when we bring the energy advisor in to understand, okay, do we want to have glazing on this side? Is there a viewpoint that we're going to take in? So how are we going to understand how that's going to affect the energy model of the house? So that's kind of like our first meeting, getting this broad shape of the house, and then also a lot of the goals and how do I explain that? The goals that are going to drive the biggest factors on the project. Mm-hmm. And then from there, after we have a really good idea of the form of the house, then we're going to start on a conceptual design. And when we go through the conceptual design and have something together, then we can start bringing in other parties to have their input on how that structure and how the mechanicals and how all those pieces are going to play together in this overall form, and how one thing is going to connect to the next thing. And so that meeting, depending on how involved the homeowner even is, might even not even be part of that next meeting. And then after that's all done, then we would start thinking about going and looking at the presentation of this project, so that we've kind of checked some boxes off on our side, and also try to hit as many of the details that you're hoping in your house, then we're sharing that with you. Okay, so at this point now you have conceptual design, something to look at, and then if you're happy with that, then we can move it into the next steps. But there is some time that takes, and so you have to work with us and understand that we're working towards your goals. And that first meeting, we're trying to understand as many of the things that are going to impact your project largest. So that's kind of our thought process on that. And so hopefully that is important to you, because we know it's important to us to give you a successful project. So yeah.
Think of like the way that I look at a house is your design on paper is like the skin and bones. Like once it goes up, right? That's it. It's the skin and it's the bones. The mechanical, the lighting, the comfort of the home, all of the fit and finishes. That's the meat. That's like the organs, your nerve endings of the house. It's just, that's how I sort of envision it sometimes, is there's just so much that goes into it, and there's just so much knowledge in every realm that it's so important to get everybody's perspective.
Even when you think about doctors, how many doctors is there, and it's one body?
Totally, yeah.
So
totally, yeah. Great, good like that, yeah.
Yeah, because you can't know everything about every part. So that bringing all these parties together, it's almost like going in for surgery. There's going to be 5 doctors in there to do one surgery. Maybe, I'm not sure, but
you're going to have an anesthesiologist. Yeah. Sorry, I just had to cut in because it's great. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally. You're going to have a doctor you wouldn't get a doctor who specializes in hearts working on your brain, right? So just an example.
But so I hope that was holding value for everybody. And we would encourage you to share with us anything that you'd like us to chat about, because we love doing these podcasts, and we're sorry that it took the time that it took us to get in front of the camera again, but we are excited to keep going. And hopefully everybody got some sort of value out of today, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Nice. High five.